Breaking news out of Bristol, Tennessee, where a shooting investigation is underway. Our Olivia Bailey live on the scene there along the Volunteer Parkway right now. Olivia, what's the latest from that scene?
Here's what we know right now. They got the call to the active shooter who was just shooting at random at vehicles. There's not really any clear motive of why the suspect might have been doing that, but we're told once police arrived on scene to confront the suspect that he opened fire on police as well. Police responded, shooting that suspect. We're told he has been taken to the Bristol Regional Medical Center.
Our Olivia Bailey is live along the Volunteer Parkway with the latest of what's happening on that scene. Olivia.
So we're right down here. You can see this extends from O'Reilly's, Days Inn, even down to the intersection with Tennessee High there here on Volunteer Parkway. So here's what we know right now, and this is coming from Police Chief Blaine Wade. He tells us they responded to the call of an active shooter early this morning, and he tells us that shooter was just shooting at the public. So when officers responded to that call, the shooter actually engaged police in gunfire.
We're following a breaking story from overnight and what police are describing as the beginning is an active shooter situation in Bristol, Tennessee. Now, several people are in the hospital. News 5 WCYB's Olivia Bailey is live along the Volunteer Parkway with the latest developments of what's unfolding there. Olivia.
Multiple people have been shot along the road here, including a police officer. Now, we're told that once police arrived on scene, that the suspect was engaging in gunfire with police, and police did fire back. That suspect has now been taken to the hospital. Now, there are multiple crime scenes involved here. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see back behind me some of the remnants of one of the crime scenes here. You can see a gun on the scene here and multiple items. TBI just got here as well as Sullivan County District Attorney General Barry Stobbs. So several people on the scene here, an active crime scene. Now, here is what we know. Let me go through some of this again. Several people have been taken to the emergency room at Bristol Regional Medical Center, and the TBI and Barry Stobbs have taken over this investigation.
We do have that reaction there right now from Police Chief Blaine Wade of what they were dealing with once they got to the scene, and also a witness describing what he saw in the overnight hours.
We now have the scene secure. All the parkway is now safe, and everything is back in order.
It kept going off like every 10 seconds, like random bursts of gunfire. So I start to walk down here to see what's happening, but I kind of stopped because I don't think I want to get in the middle of it.
An active shooter situation unfolded just after 2 o'clock this morning. We're told that a suspect was firing at random along Volunteer Parkway. Here's some video from earlier this morning. There is still an active scene there along the parkway. We're told that the suspect engaged with officers. The officers returned fire. The suspect has now been taken to the hospital, as well as a police officer. We're told that officer only had minor injuries. Other people also that may have been hit or involved in this in the overnight hours have been taken to Bristol Regional Medical Center. Our Olivia Bailey is on the scene along the parkway, but right now let's go outside the hospital. Our team coverage continues there with Maggie Smolka.
Preston, as you mentioned, I'm at the Bristol Regional Medical Center right now. Not a whole lot of information they're giving us about the victims. The spokesperson does say they were taken to this hospital, but can't get into the specifics until there's some names released, and all that information is coming through the TBI office and the DA's office. What I can tell you is that I've been seeing a lot of police cars passing by, and as I've been driving here, and of course at this time we don't know if that's connected to what happened earlier this morning, but we will continue to keep you updated with the latest information. You can follow us online and on air starting at 5 o'clock. That's when we'll have a little bit more about how this all unfolded and a little bit more about the victim.
We have continuing coverage of this developing story, but we want to show you a map right now that outlines the area that we're talking about where this unfolded. It's highlighted in red on this map. Police tell us that the crime scene stretches from Weaver Pike to along Hill Street, all the way along the Volunteer Parkway there. The majority of the activity, though, is centered around the Days Inn Motel and the O'Reilly Auto Parts parking lots there along the Volunteer Parkway. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is now leading the investigation, and according to the Bristol Herald-Courier, we have learned, though, within the last half hour, 44-year-old Jennifer Brewer Rooney, a carrier for them, was killed this morning in the shooting. The paper saying she was traveling to pick up papers this morning when she was shot, and her vehicle then went over an embankment. Now, that information is according to the Bristol Herald-Courier. Authorities have not released any of the names of those involved. A press conference wrapped up a little while ago with the TBI and the District Attorney's Office. News 5 WCYB's Olivia Bailey has been on the scene since early this morning. She attended the press conference, joins us now live. Olivia, what have we learned?
Preston, we're told the scene here unfolded around 2 o'clock this morning as the gunman opened fire on the Days Inn on Volunteer Parkway, as well as cars just driving around Volunteer Parkway down the street here. And we're told that the suspect then opened fire on officers responding to the call. We're told 3 officers had responded. One of those was taken to the hospital with a gunshot wound. We now know that that officer has been released and has been placed on administrative leave. Now, we know that the officers did fire back at the suspect, did hit the suspect, and the suspect has also been taken to the hospital. In addition, we know that 1 person is dead and 2 others are injured in this case. But in terms of the other details, authorities say that they're in the very preliminary stages here, just gathering evidence here at the scene.
We are working as aggressively, as quickly, and as carefully as possible to gather any and all relevant evidence to determine the exact set of events.
News 5's Maggie Smoka has been on this story since early this morning. She joins us live now from the scene of the shooting with more on the victims. Maggie?
PJ, Julie, the scene has since cleared, but you should have seen it earlier. There were tons of investigators combing the area, searching for any evidence and clues that might lead to a breakthrough in this investigation. Yellow police tape lined Volunteer Parkway for blocks. The suspect certainly did cover a large amount of ground as random shots were fired at innocent victims. Now, I want to draw your attention to this truck that I'm standing behind. You can still see the damage that's left behind, a bullet hole through the window. This is just kind of an example of how random this shooting actually was. But now I want to focus on the victims. The one lady who lost her life earlier this morning, her name was Jennifer Rooney. She was a newspaper carrier at the Bristol Herald-Courier, going to pick up papers for her delivery when she was hit by one of those random bullets. Her car among at least 2 hit and then crashed into an embankment. She died hours later at Bristol Regional Medical Center. And over at the Days Inn, motel manager Corinne Patel tells us his front desk worker Debbie was also shot several times. He explains what he remembers about Debbie and those pressing moments after he heard shots fired.
We heard some noise and I thought it's a firecracker or something. And after 5 minutes it happened again, so my wife woke up and she called Debbie just to make sure everything is okay. And she told her that she has been shot.
3 others were also hospitalized, including the suspect. No word on their conditions. Plus, a Bristol, Tennessee police officer who was slightly wounded while responding to the shooting. He's since been treated and released. The Bristol Herald-Courier did release this statement. It reads in part, quote, "We are shocked and saddened that this individual lost their life in this senseless act of violence. Jennifer Rooney was a wonderful person. Her family is in our thoughts and prayers."
Maggie, what have you learned?
Rebecca, I first want you to take a look at this truck that I'm standing next to. One of those bullets going through the windshield. This is just some of the remaining damage from the random shooting this morning. Now, you're probably noticing that the scene has since cleared, but you should have seen it earlier. There were tons of investigators out here combing the area, searching for any clues or evidence that might lead to a breakthrough in this investigation. Yellow police tape was lining these streets on Volunteer Parkway for blocks, and the suspect certainly covered a large amount of territory. But before all of that yellow tape was put up and before any of the investigators started combing this area, Jennifer Rooney was on her way to work. She was a newspaper carrier at the Bristol Herald-Courier, going to pick up papers when she was hit by one of those random bullets, crashing her car into an embankment. She died hours later at the Bristol Regional Medical Center. And then over at the Days Inn, motel manager Corinne Patel tells us his front desk worker was also shot several times and is still waiting to hear how she's recovering. Doctors over at Bristol Regional Medical Center practice for these types of tragedies, so today they put their practice to some good use.
Everybody's mobilized within less than 20 minutes. And so usually we have a pretty good heads up of what's going on. And especially in cases such as the one last night with gunshot wounds, we have in-house staff that's already prepared, and they're almost mobilized immediately, and then the rest respond accordingly.
including the suspect. No word on the condition, plus a Bristol, Tennessee police officer who was slightly wounded while responding to the shooting. He's since been treated and released.
Shooting spree happened around 2:30 this morning. Some of the shots fired were at passing cars as they were traveling down Volunteer Parkway. Now, we want to show you the map of the area we're talking about. It's all outlined in red. Police say the scene stretches from Weaver Pike all the way to Hill Street. The majority of the activity was centered around the Days Inn Motel and the nearby O'Reilly Auto Parts parking lot. Now, we have complete coverage on the investigation. News 5's Maggie Smoker will join us live from the scene in just a minute to give us an update on the victims.
But first, we begin with News 5's Olivia Bailey, who was at a press conference earlier today. She joins us with the latest on what happened. Olivia?
A gunman apparently shooting randomly along Bristol's Volunteer Parkway killed a newspaper carrier in her vehicle and injured several others.
There was a couple of them that came away. I actually had to duck and take off running.
The fatal victim has been identified by the Bristol Herald-Courier as one of their carriers, 44-year-old Jennifer Brewer Rooney. She was shot in her vehicle and it careened over an embankment and crashed. Police arriving on the scene as it unfolded traded gunshots with the shooter, who was among those wounded and taken to the hospital. A Bristol, Tennessee police officer was slightly injured in the gunfire.
The officer is okay. The officer is not at the hospital. He is now on administrative leave.
The scene unfolded around 2 o'clock Thursday morning.
We've determined a subject armed with at least 2 weapons fired shots at the Days Inn on Volunteer Parkway and several vehicles.
The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and Sullivan County District Attorney Barry Stombas are now heading up the investigation.
We are going to take a look at everything from the inciting incident to what led to the officer's actions as we piece together all of the details in preparation for handing that over to the District Attorney General.
Getting the facts right in Bristol, Tennessee, Olivia Bailey, News 5 WCYB.
The TBI has not released the name of the suspect at this time, so no charges have been filed yet.
But our coverage continues tonight with more information about the extent of the shooting area, several blocks on Volunteer Parkway, and on the victims of that shooting. News 5's Maggie Smoker joins us live.
Julie, I first want to take you to this truck that's behind me. One of those bullet holes actually going through this windshield and through the back of the window, and it kind of just shows some of the damage that happened this morning. Now, the scene has since cleared out, but as we first showed you in the morning, there were tons of investigators combing the area, searching for any clues and evidence that might lead them through a breakthrough in this investigation. There was also yellow police tape lining the streets of Volunteer Parkway for blocks. The suspect here certainly covered a lot of territory as random shots were fired. And this is where I want to go now. I want to take you to the victims, the ones who lost their lives in this morning's crime. Before all this police tape lined Volunteer Parkway, before investigators combed the area for clues, Jennifer Rooney was on her way to work. She was a newspaper carrier at the Bristol Herald-Courier, going to pick up papers when suddenly she was hit by a random bullet. Here's one of the 2 cars that crashed into this embankment. She died hours later at Bristol Regional Medical Center. The Bristol Herald-Courier releasing this statement that says in part, "We are shocked and saddened that this individual lost their life in this senseless act of violence. Jennifer Rooney was a wonderful person. Her family is in our thoughts and prayers." Over at the Days Inn, motel manager Kiran Patel tells us his front desk worker was also shot several times. He's now waiting on that one phone call, hoping she's still alive.
She is just not like a front desk clerk. She is like a family to us.
3 others were also taken in for care, including the suspect, plus a Bristol, Tennessee police officer who was slightly wounded while responding to the shooting. He's since been treated and released. Events like these are something medical professionals are taught to deal with, so when they happen, they're ready to take action.
We look at the victims that we can help the most immediately and those that we can't.
Crimes like this, an apparent random shooting, are shocking for people living in the Tri-Cities.
It's hard. I mean, I have never seen something like this.
Now, that last quote you heard from the motel owner is kind of the general consensus of how everyone is feeling today in Bristol. I was walking up and down the streets of Volunteer Parkway a lot and talking to people who live nearby as well as business owners, and they all kind of can't believe that this happened so close to home. Still, a lot of questions need to be answered. The biggest one, perhaps, is why the shooter decided to do this random shooting. This was the aftermath of a deadly shooting spree, killing Jennifer Rooney and injuring 4 more, including the gunman himself. Here are witnesses who drove by and saw it all happen.
It's scary. It makes you wonder what's going through people's minds nowadays.
The gunman is identified as Lakeem Keon Scott. Officers say early Thursday morning he was equipped with ammunition and at least an automatic rifle and pistol, randomly shooting at innocent victims until exchanging gunshots with police.
We saw the gunman and the officers with their guns drawn. Then it was like a rain of gunfire.
Officials say Scott may have been troubled by recent incidents involving African Americans and law enforcement officers in other parts of the country. A Facebook page has his name in Bristol, Tennessee listed as where he lives. It says Scott is a member of the official Jason Black group. It has posts like this one saying, quote, "The police have initiated a race war by killing black people one at a time." And it goes on to say, let's wait until they're killing us 50 at a time before we acknowledge it's war already. As part of the investigation, a search warrant was issued for this apartment complex in Bristol, Tennessee. Even though the TBI won't confirm the suspect lived here, neighbors say they often saw him.
We just met in passing, coming and going, in and out. Basically, that's about it. He seems to be a real sweet, gentle man, as far as I know.
3rd floor. He used to be my neighbor.
53-year-old Deborah Watts, the Days Inn clerk, is praying for him from her hospital bed as she continues to battle severe injuries from the attack. It's been almost a week since Michelle Brooks got a call in the middle of the night to go to the hospital. She was told her mother was in an accident at work.
We seen the crime scene before we actually seen, or knew what was going on with her, and I panicked.
She thought it may have been a robbery. Never would she have guessed a man would walk up to the Days Inn Motel, where her mother has worked for nearly 16 years, and open fire.
I was shocked when nothing's ever happened like that. Nothing's ever happened in Bristol like that.
Brooks says her mom, Deborah Watts, has already been through 2 surgeries and has at least 1 more to go.
And she had 25 holes in places in her scrapes.
They know at least 1 bullet went through her shoulder, shattering her arm.
But she doesn't have any mobility in her arms whatsoever.
During the last week, her mother recalls the details of the attack. She was conscious the entire time.
When she heard the gun go off, she threw her arms up in front of her face, and she prayed that she would be okay. And then she said he finally left her alone, and she was able, to pick up the phone to call 911.
Watts has been praying for her attacker. Her daughter says she didn't know Scott. Asked about the suspected motive of police racism, Brooks says in her opinion that's not an issue in Bristol, Tennessee.
The police officers here are not like that. They don't target, certain race and individuals. They're out to their job, and that's to protect everybody.
If convicted, Scott also faces up to 25 years for each of the other 14 felony charges against him. First-degree murder carries the possibility of the death penalty. Several people have asked whether or not Scott could be charged with a hate crime. Staubus says that's considered a federal crime, and we do know that the FBI is involved in the investigation. Scott remains hospitalized but has been formally charged. His bond is set at $5 million. PJ?
It's been nearly 2 months since Lakeem Scott was arrested for killing 1 and injuring 3 others when he randomly started shooting along Volunteer Parkway.
Now, he's been recovering from gunshot wounds, and now his medical bills are piling up. News 5's Christy O'Connor gives us a closer look at how much his treatment is costing all of us. Christy?
Yeah, Julie, PJ, we learned it cost tens of thousands of dollars for Lakeem Scott to just be in that hospital bed for those 2.5 weeks after the shooting. And while it's unclear if the county or his military insurance is footing the bill, in the end, it's coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. Accused Volunteer Parkway shooter Lakeem Scott is getting back from one of his weekly doctor's visits, along with 3 officers who escort him. Being transported to the hospital by bus is not the usual protocol for the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office.
Due to his size and his injuries, we can't get him in a patrol car or a van.
The county saved thousands of dollars by using a school bus for his transport. But it's just one of many accommodations they've had to make because of his size and the severity of his injuries.
We have had to put up rails that were strong enough to hold to his weight limits, as well as shower chairs. We even had to have special uniforms made for him.
The county had to rent special medical equipment to treat some of his wounds. That cost more than $5,000 alone. Plus, the medical staff had to get additional training to use it.
He is definitely the most challenging that we've seen here. He comes to medical at least twice a day for an individualized treatment plan.
While Scott's care is costing thousands of dollars, it's the hours of manpower that's adding up.
When he was in the hospital, we had 2 officers there, one from corrections and one from patrol, 24 hours a day.
And when these officers are pulled from their patrol or corrections duty, it takes those officers off the street.
We've got 3 or 4 officers tied up for 2 or 3 hours at a doctor's appointment. We have to take them from somewhere.
Until Scott recovers from his injuries, he's being held in a segregated part of the jail. But I'm told that doesn't cost any more than the other inmates, which is roughly $50 a day to house them. The health staff says Scott is healing much faster than they anticipated. He was just cleared from his surgeon today. PJ?
Swift justice for a man who went on a shooting rampage along Volunteer Parkway in Bristol. Lakeem Scott admits to opening fire just 5 months ago along the busy road near the Days Inn. He killed 1 person and injured 4 others. Today, our cameras were inside the courtroom as he learned his fate. But before we talk about what happened in court today, we want to take a look at what led to this point. We begin on July 7th of this year when Scott admitted to randomly shooting at people and cars along Volunteer Parkway in Bristol, Tennessee. Police officers eventually shot Scott, ending the violence. Scott remained in the hospital recovering from his injuries until July 25th. That's when officers transferred him to the Sullivan County Jail. We were there when the ambulance arrived at the jail and Scott was brought in for booking. Then 4 days later, on July 29th, Scott made his first court appearance, still bound to a wheelchair. He was arraigned on murder and attempted murder charges. And then that brings us to today. Lakeem Scott entered a guilty plea before the judge and was sentenced to life in prison with a chance at parole after 52 years. That would make him 92 years old before he could possibly be released. News 5's Maggie Smoke has been bringing you the latest on this case from the very start. And Maggie, today you got your hands on an interview that investigators did with Lakeem Scott, where he actually confesses. So Maggie, how'd you find this and why did he do it?
PJ, it's all revealed right here. Some chilling new details. I read through all 18 pages where Lakeem Scott kept insisting that this was all on him and that he wanted to tell everything. In that interview, he says he was upset over shootings of black people in other parts of the country and admitted shooting in retaliation. Today in court, he did the same. This was the first time we saw Lakeem Scott walking into court without a wheelchair or any type of assistance. A packed house as family of the victims hear the judge say Scott will get life in prison.
He's out of society.
Emotions running high, but a sense of relief.
The best outcome for the situation. It'd be better if it hadn't happened at all. But it's the best outcome for the situation.
It's only been 5 months since the tragic shooting that killed Jennifer Rooney, Mike Rooney's daughter-in-law. Scott takes a plea deal from the state.
It's very unusual to have a case wrap up like this.
District Attorney Barry Staubis was contemplating the death penalty, but the ones closest to the case wanted to move things along.
I am pleased for the family that we were able to resolve this case with a life sentence, and they don't have to go through the process of a trial under appeals.
We got our hands on the transcript of the interview Scott did with a TBI agent the day after the shooting rampage. I read through all 18 pages, uncovering new details as Scott admitted it was a random act of rage. He said the day of the shooting, he could have ambushed the police officers who brought him down, but stayed back. The agent asked, so you decided not to ambush them because of the black officer? Scott agreed, saying he did not want to ambush them out of respect. Back at the courthouse, the Rooney family hopes this plea will bring them closure.
Trying to move on to a reasonably normal life.
Now, as far as that TBI interview with Scott, I posted the full transcript on our website. You can head to WCYB.com to read through it all. PJ?